Hello and welcome to the Solana Crash Course for developers, founders, and investors. My name is Raza. I'm going to explain everything you need to know about Solana in simple language, and I'll try not to use any buzzwords. There's 4 parts to this. I'll start with what Solana is, how it works, and why you might want to build on it, and we'll explore the ecosystem. Then, because this is completely new tech, I'll explain some of the buzzwords and some of the terms that you'll run into when you're building on Solana and when you're using Solana applications. Next up, I'll talk about the developer ecosystem, what development in Solana actually looks like, and I'll explain some development fundamentals. If you're not a developer, you can skip this. Finally, I'll end with how you can actually start building, including how you can find developers if you're a founder, how you can find investors if you're a developer, or how you can start investing and get support from the Solana Foundation. So, what is Solana? Solana is a platform for building applications on top of. What does that mean? You're watching this video on YouTube, which is an application built on Google's platform. Solana is the same thing at the base level. It's a network of computers that run software that lets you use them for running code and storing data. Just like a lot of people can deploy applications to Google's platform and Amazon and Azure or Microsoft, you can do the same thing with Solana. You can deploy applications on Solana. The way Solana differs is in how the network operates and the software it runs. There are certain types of applications that are only possible on Solana. I'll talk about what some of these applications are and why they could only work on Solana in the ecosystem section. For now, let's look at the rest of the platform, which is made up of the applications that are building on top of it and the communities that are building on top of it. The network itself, one of the things that differs between Solana and traditional cloud platforms like Google Cloud and Amazon and Azure is that Solana is open. That means anyone, anywhere on the planet or even off the planet, as long as they have access to the internet, they can use Solana. They can build on Solana and they can access it. This differs from companies like Google or Amazon, where their services are not available in certain countries like North Korea or Syria. Solana is also public. That means the activity on the network is available to everyone. However, this is kind of meaningless because you need to know the identities of the parties involved and you need to know the format of the data. So by default, everything is pseudo-anonymous and people need to explicitly declare their identities and they need to declare the format of the data and even where the data is stored. So if you don't explicitly declare where your data is stored and how it's formatted, people can't read it because it's going to be completely meaningless gibberish. The applications on Solana are mostly financial, banking, lending, and trading. The why of this will make sense when I explain how Solana works, but there are a lot of applications that are not financial, such as art collection, video games that are building their economies on Solana, social media applications that let you own your own data, and physical infrastructure that let you coordinate on Solana. Communities. Solana has a lot of communities, and this is because everyone can participate, and because of the structure of the network and the tools that are available, users are given a lot more ownership. These two things kind of let communities thrive and just grow. There's a lot of self-organized communities, and there's also communities that are organized by specific groups to focus on certain tasks and certain areas of growth. Now, let's talk about how Solana actually works. The network lets people host code and store data. This is used for making applications. That's not new. You could have done that for the last 20, 25 years. What's new and what's unique to blockchains is that they let people transmit verifiable messages. What does that mean? Let's say I want to send my dad a message, and I've told my dad, don't trust video calls from me, don't trust videos of me, don't trust voice messages of me. If you get a phone call that sounds like me, it's not me. People are using deepfakes, they're cloning my voice, don't trust it. So how do I get my dad a message that's verifiably by me? Well, I can send him a letter. If the letter, I can write a letter, I can put my fingerprint on it, I can sign it, and I can put my iris scan on it. I don't know how to do that, but whatever. I do a fingerprint scan, I do a signature, and I do an iris scan, and then I send that letter. I mail that letter, physical letter, to my dad. That way, he can verify that it's me. He knows my signature, he knows my fingerprint, he knows my iris scan. That way, he can be absolutely sure whatever is in that message is by me. That is a verifiable message. Let me give you another example. I've got $5 right here. I want to send these $5 to you. How do I do that? Well, I go to my bank. I put these $5 in my bank. My bank knows that this is real money. They're going to check that this is real money. Cool. And they're going to send it to your bank. My bank is doing the verification of the message. They can verify that this is real $5. You got the real penguin on the back. They can verify that this message came from me. And they're verifying that I'm actually sending this to you. Now, let's say your bank doesn't support my bank for some reason. Your bank doesn't support penguin dollars. I can't send this money to you. Well, what other options do I have? I can put it on Solana. I can put these $5 on Solana, and because Solana is global and I can do it anywhere, these $5 will reach you. So this, the verifiable message part, this is used for making and moving currencies. When I say making currencies, I don't mean making money. I mean literally fabricating dollars. So when I give this $5 to my bank fabricates $5 in their balances, and it transfers those $5 to your bank. You can do the exact same thing on Solana. So what have you got? You've got these computers that are running all over the globe. This is a picture of the Solana network. Well, I say picture, but really it's a graph of the Solana network. You've got all of these computers all over the world transmitting verifiable messages. And you've got software, you've got code that lets you create money. It lets you make money, not just earn money, but also create money. This gives you a global banking system that you can plug into and that you can build applications on top of. Let's say you build a vault that lets you lock up money and gives you interest over time. You can do that on Solana. Your bank already does that, but your bank probably doesn't work if you're in another country. Your bank doesn't support certain currencies. Solana lets you do all of that. That's what the point of Solana is. It is a global, verifiable, transactional machine. Now, there's a few other things that I haven't talked about, such as the unstoppability of it. Because Solana is all over the globe and it's run by computers that are run by you and me. So the people running these computers are not big companies. Most of the time, it's people like you and I. We can run a Solana node. We can run a computer that does the verification of messages on Solana. So all these people over here, these are regular human beings. They're not one person. They're not run by one person, unlike Jeff Bezos and Amazon. So no one person controls these. And what that means is they can't kick you off the network. So it is actually unstoppable. I've already covered that it's shared and that it's open. And the one thing that differs from Solana and AWS and Google, another one of the things rather, is that you pay for usage in Sol. So Sol is short for is the ticker for the Solana token, and the Solana token is the native currency of the Solana network. In the US, the native currency is US dollars. In Canada, it's Canadian dollars. In New Zealand, it's Penguin dollars. Apparently, it's actually New Zealand dollars, but whatever. Solana Sol tokens are the native currency on Solana. And so if you want to do something on Solana, you have to pay for your usage of the network. You have to pay these computers that are transmitting your messages. You have to pay for storage that happens in Sol. There's a bunch of other stuff like consensus and proof of stake and validators that you might run into. You do not need to know this. It's honestly not necessary. It's really technical stuff that even I, as a developer, I don't really care about this stuff. The big question that developers and founders often have is why bother with Solana? Why put in all of the effort necessary to learn how to use this new technology when you can just continue doing it the way you've always been doing it? The answer is because using Solana is actually less effort. It takes less time, less energy, less resources to use what already exists on Solana than building it yourself. If your app needs one of these qualities, you can just plug into Solana and just get started. You can just get building. You can focus on your product, not focus on the infrastructure. You don't have to focus on the code itself. A lot of the companies that are building on Solana open source, and more open sourcing every day, they let you use the tech that they've already deployed at cost. You don't have to pay them. You can just use their software that already exists on Solana. So it ends up being faster, cheaper, and easier than doing it yourself. The caveat here is that whatever you're building needs to benefit from the qualities that Solana offers. If your app doesn't need decentralization, if it doesn't need one or more of these qualities, you do not need to build on Solana. You can do it the way you've always been doing it. And personally, my opinion is that most things don't need to be on Solana. Your AI-powered to-do app doesn't need to be on Solana. Your local baker's inventory system doesn't need to be on Solana. I will share two of my favorite examples that are on Solana and that really benefit from it, which are number one, payments. So Stripe and PayPal are the most popular payment processors on the internet, and they charge 3% per transaction. So if you have $1 million in sale, you're going to lose $30,000 to PayPal and Stripe. Solana charges transaction fees for each transaction to the user. This is what it costs to send $1 million to another user. So if you made $1 million in sales, maybe it's 1,000 transactions, maybe it's 10,000 transactions, whatever it is, you will receive $1 million. This is a rounding, this rounds down to zero. I'm happy to pay $0.0006 so I can avoid paying PayPal and Stripe and have cheaper products. Number two is physical infrastructure. Solana has user identities and payments built in. This lets you coordinate users, the services they offer, and collect payments and distribute rewards all in one closed ecosystem without having to build each individual part yourself. Two companies that are already doing this are HiveMapper and Helium. HiveMapper is building an alternative to Google Maps where users contribute map data and payments happen on chain. Helium is doing the same thing for a cellular network. So it's a new cellular network where users own the hardware and they're paid for the data collection services. Let's take a look at the ecosystem next. These are most of the big communities, products, and companies that are building on Solana. Every single one of the applications on the screen right here are doing something that's either only possible on Solana, or they're using Solana's technology to create a product that's a better experience than traditional options. Case in point is Jupiter. Jupiter is an exchange aggregator, and this is what it looks like. Right here, I am swapping 100 US dollars to 92 euros. The C over here stands for coin, so this is a virtualized dollar and this is a virtualized euro, so euro coin and USD coin. This product as it exists is available to everyone on the internet. There's no regional restrictions. The rates are incredible. The fees are none. Jupiter has 0 fees and it's open 24/7. You don't have to sign up, you can just get started. What you do need is a wallet, and I'll cover what that is later. But this product could only exist on Solana, and it can only exist on blockchains, and this is just way better than the traditional option of, or the traditional experience of going to a currency exchange in person or using the online options, which usually cost quite a lot and are very slow. Now, I'm not going to cover every single app or company or infrastructure piece in the ecosystem. What I recommend doing is picking an area that you're interested in and digging into it. I will recommend using 3 specific apps. That is Jupiter. So I've already covered Jupiter. This is a DEX aggregator. I will highly recommend Drip. So Drip is it's a platform that lets collectors and creators meet. So if you've got a creator, you can recommend them to join Drip, or you can find a creator on Drip and you will get free collectibles from them. And if you like their work, you can support them. Beyond the second, I'll let you pick what you like. Try at least 3 apps. Mine isn't really an app, it's more of a plugin. So this is the Solana Pay Shopify plugin. If you've got a Shopify store, you can add this to your store and people can pay for whatever products you're selling using Solana, and that cuts your fees down and it increases your profits. Moving on to one of my favorite examples of how everything on Solana comes together. This right here is a screenshot from Wells Fargo, which is a US bank. Wells Fargo, the customers, they have a lot of options available for what they want to do at that bank, but it's restricted to the US and it's restricted to Wells Fargo customers. Solana lets everyone on the planet have access to similar features, not the exact same features, but similar features, and often features that are much better. So if you want to do wealth management, if you want to invest, if you want insurance, chances are there's an app on Solana that will let you do that. And the most beautiful thing is a bunch of these apps work together to improve your experience. To give you an example, Meteora and Camino are 2 wealth management platforms on Solana. These are places where you'd put your money to get a good return. Think of them like a savings account. Because everyone in the ecosystem can build on top of each other and a bunch of these platforms are open source, that's what people do. So Jupiter offers better prices because they use the liquidity that's available in Camino and Meteora. In exchange, the people that are lending their assets or storing their assets in Meteora and Camino get better yields. To give you again an example, we'll go back to Jupiter and you can see I'm swapping again dollars to euros. And if I click the route as to where this money is actually coming from, I can see that 10% of it is coming from Meteora, 10% is coming from Meteora's DLMM product, and 80% of it is coming from Phoenix. It's swapping in real time because that's how you get better rates. And that is the beauty of Solana. Enough chit chat, how do you get started? The first thing you're going to need to do is create an identity. Traditionally, this would be an email address and a password, but on Solana, you're going to do something called create a key pair. A key pair is a public key and a private key. Think of these like your bank account address and your bank account password. These are created by something called a wallet, which is a piece of software that helps you secure your identity. Traditionally, again, your email address and password would sit in a server somewhere. It's owned by Google or owned by Amazon, or maybe it's just owned by whatever app you're using. On Solana, your identity is owned by you, and everything in that identity is also owned and held by you. And a wallet is the piece of software that helps you manage your identity. So first thing you do is create a wallet. I recommend Phantom. It's the most popular wallet on Solana. That's what I use as well. Once you're done with that, I'll link Phantom in the description, by the way. Once you're done with that, you're going to need to get some SOL tokens. So again, these are the native tokens of the Solana network, and these are what's used to pay for usage. So if you want to do something on Solana, that's you'll need some SOL tokens. $1 of SOL tokens is enough for several hundred, if not thousand transactions. So yeah, just $1 is enough for years. Next, explore the ecosystem. I've already gone over it. Pick an app that you like. Pick something that's interesting. Pick Drip. Pick Jupiter. Pick Margin, Camino, whatever it floats your boat, whatever you feel interested in. Explore your curiosities. It's like exploring a new type of internet. Let's talk about the terms, the topics, and the buzzwords that you'll run into when you're either building an application on Solana, or maybe you're a founder, or whatever. Whenever you're using Solana, these are some of the things, the most common things that you will run into. First and foremost, we've got transaction. So this is how you do things on Solana, the network itself. Remember, if you'll remember, I mentioned that a transaction is a verifiable message. So if you want to send some tokens to someone, if you want to make a trade, if you want to buy something, that's done via a transaction. That's the technical term that's used for Solana. On-chain and off-chain, the apps that you'll be using aren't entirely on Solana. The front end, the clients, those are still regular software. They're regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you're using a mobile app, that may be Swift, whatever it is. A bunch of the stuff that these apps do is not on-chain. They only do the necessary stuff on-chain. The rest of the stuff happens off-chain, as in not on the network itself. Stuff like database storage, stuff like caches. So if you've got an app that's caching your balance, that's probably going to be happening off chain in a database somewhere, not on Solana itself. This is done to give you a better experience. While it's possible to do everything on Solana, it's not often feasible and doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things don't need to be on chain, as I previously covered. A validator. So a validator is just the name that's given to a computer that's processing transactions, that's verifying transactions, and that's storing data off Solana. Token. A token is an asset that is on the network. So if you've got $1 in your hand, when you put it on the network, you will have it as a token, usually called, for dollars, it's usually US dollar coin token. So coin and token are sometimes used interchangeably, but token is the more general term. If you've got a non-fungible token, for instance, that is a unique token that is not exchangeable with others. If you've got $1, let's say I've got this $5 note. This $5 note is exchangeable with all other $5 notes. That's what fungibility is. No matter which $5 note I have, they're all worth the same amount. They're worth $5. However, let's say I got a signature from the Queen of England, who's not alive anymore. I got a signature from the Queen of England on this $5 note. Because I've got a signature from the Queen of England, that makes this note very unique. It is not the same value. It is not the same look as other $5 notes. So a signature from the Queen of England would increase the value of this note, and that would make it non-fungible. So fungibility is the same as exchangeability, and non-fungibility is a token, or non-fungibility is something that's not exchanged for things of the other type. So you can't copy non-fungible tokens, or you can't exchange non-fungible tokens for one another. Moving on to stake, when you've got all of these computers all across the globe contributing to the security and the processing of the network, you might have people that will submit false transactions. Let's say you submit a transaction, falsely submit a transaction that says this guy transferred $5 to this account. How do you prevent that? You prevent that by requiring people to lock up SOL tokens. So if you want to contribute to the network, you have to lock up some assets. Those assets are SOL tokens. And if you submit false data, if you submit false information to the network, those assets are seized. This creates an economic incentive for you to not lie. Because if you lie, if you submit false data to the network, you're going to lose a lot of money. Oracle. An oracle is a middleman that transfers off-chain data on-chain. So let's say the price of gold, for instance, that is something that's available in the real world. And if you want to take that price of gold and you want to put it on-chain, you're going to do that with an oracle. Oracles can also do other things like, let's say, put the weather on-chain. Also, don't know why you do that. These are done trustlessly, so you can most of the time, if you've got a good oracle, you can trust that whatever data it's giving you is good. Next up, signature. A signature in real life lets you verify that something came from someone. You've got people that can forge signatures, but we'll ignore that for a little bit. In this analogy, we can ignore that. So if you've got a signature from someone, you're absolutely sure that's what the person said, or that's a contract that they signed, or that's a transaction that came from them. Similarly, a signature in Solana or on the blockchain networks is a way for you to make sure that something came from someone. In literal terms, it's a string of text, or it's a string of numbers and letters that is used to cryptographically secure something. So I'm not going to get into hash functions, but You can think of it like a magic string that proves that something came from someone. Moving on, program and smart contract. These are sometimes used interchangeably, but the term on Solana is commonly program. So a program is code that lives on Solana. It's an entire block of code that does something. If I've got, let's say, a vault program on Solana, that would be written in Rust, and the code the code of the entire vault program is called a program. So that's what it is. It's code on the Solana network that does something with your assets. Rent. Similar to rent in the real world, when you're storing stuff on Solana, if you want to store your data on Solana, you have to pay rent to the network. This way, people are required to pay a very small amount of fees, so the network doesn't have a lot of spam. So that's what rent is. If you want to store data on Solana, you have to pay rent. When you're done storing it, you can withdraw your rent. So a lot of applications these days, they will let you retrieve your rent. So in the end, you can use Solana and not pay anything except your transaction fees. Account. An account is a place on the network where data is stored. So accounts can have multiple meanings. You can have an account address. So an account address is the location of your account. Usually, your account address is the location of your account where data on the network is stored. It's a way to identify where on the network data is stored. So if you, let's say, pretend all of this is the network, something over here would have a different address to something over here. And that's what you use. This block right here, this block would be called an account, and the way to identify this account would be with the account address. Mainnet, testnet, and devnet. So there's not just one Solana network. There's actually 3 Solana networks, and the one that has real money is called mainnet. The accounts that are, the networks that are devnet and testnet, these are for developers to test things out. These don't use real money. They cost nothing. And they require a bit more setup to interact with. These are mainly for developers to interact with, to build their applications, to test them out before you send them into the real world on the mainnet. Whew. Finally, we've come to the developer overview. Now, most development on Solana is client-based, so you'll be building web apps, React apps, Swift apps, Android apps, whatever. Whatever your choice of client is, that's what it's going to be. This is because most things you want to do on Solana, the programs for those things already exist. They've already been deployed. All you need to do is interact with them. For that, you'll be taking user data, you'll be formatting it, and you'll be sending it to the programs. When you want to do something that hasn't been done on Solana before, you will need to write a new smart contract or a new program. In that case, Solana is your backend, and you'll be writing the programs in Rust. Move isn't fully supported in production. Rust is what 99% of the people use. I think 100% people. I don't know anyone that doesn't use Rust. But yes, Rust if you want to write programs and smart contracts, or smart contracts are the same thing. And web development, React, Swift, and Android if you're just building clients. There's a couple of new concepts you need to understand when you're building clients on Solana. The first of those is the wallet and dApp model. Traditionally, when you're building an app, you've got a front end and a back end, and if the user does something on the front end, you can just send whatever API call you need to the back end, and you're done. With Solana, because the back end isn't entirely yours, it is a program that's deployed on the network, and the user's assets are often changing. What you need to do is have the user verify their actions. That is done through a medium called the wallet. So if this is your app, I've got a few cats over here to explain this. This is your app. You can call this the client, the front end of your app, that you will be interacting with the user through the wallet. Not for everything, but for specific actions where you're writing to the blockchain, you will need to do this. If the user's assets are changing, you need to do this. The analogy over here I have is a kitchen. So this is a kitchen, this is a waiter, and this is a user at the front of a restaurant. So if the user wants something, they will go through the wallet, and your app will send that off to the blockchain. Next up, we've got RPC nodes. RPC nodes are special computers on the blockchain, on the Solana network, that specialize in receiving and sending data. These are not going to be validating transactions. They're not going to be storing data. No, their entire purpose is to send and receive data. They receive data from users and they put it on chain, or they send it to the computers that are validating the transactions, or they take data that is on the chain and they send it to you. So if you want to read data or if you want to write data, you'll be interacting with RPC nodes. The interactions here are just API calls. They're nothing complex. There's certain endpoints. You hit an endpoint, you have data that goes along with the endpoint, and that's it. Next up, we've got the account model. I've covered this already, but yes, accounts are places on the network where data is stored. Now, this data can be code. So an account can have program data on it. An account can have program code on it. An account can have program data on it. An account can be a user account. So that account model, that's something I'm going to dig into in my next video. So stay tuned for that one. I'll give a deep dive on what accounts are and how you can dive into them. Next up, serialization and deserialization. One of the things that Solana does is it offloads some of the work to developers. So wherever possible, instead of making the computers in the network do the work, it's going to make the developers do the work. This makes it really fast and really cheap. One of the examples is serialization and deserialization. When you're sending data to the network for storage or for processing, you need to serialize it. It needs to be in a specific format, ones and zeros. And when you're retrieving data from the blockchain, it's going to be given back to you in ones and zeros, and you need to deserialize it. You need to put it into a specific format. Next up, the smart contract and program paradigm. So when will you use a smart contract and how do you interact with these smart contracts? This is something you're also going to need to learn. So when you're interacting with smart contracts, one thing I've already covered is signatures. You're going to need to know, you're going to need to sign transactions, and you're going to need to sign the actions that are happening with those programs, and you'll also need to know how these programs work. A bunch of these have SDKs. The most popular programs in the ecosystem have SDKs. There's official Solana SDKs. There are SDKs by various apps that are building platforms on Solana themselves. And you can use these SDKs to not have to worry about the program interaction. However, when you're making a custom program, a program that's off your own, you're not going to have an SDK, and you're going to need to know how to interact with that program. And this covers things like deserialization and serialization of data. It covers the format that the program expects, all of that stuff. Next up, let's talk about reading data from the blockchain. You need two things. You need the account address. This is the location of where the data is stored, and you need the format of the data. So again, if there is an SDK, it will cover this part. It will know what the format is supposed to look like. But if there is no SDK, yeah, you're going to need to know what the format looks like. So what do? You create a connection, you fetch the data, you decode it, and you can only decode it if you know the format of it, if you know what the first 10 bytes are, what the next 10 bytes are, how many structs are there. That's all going to be something you have to know. And often when you're working with open source programs, they're going to open source this, they're going to tell you what the format of their data is. And then finally, you can interpret it, do whatever you want with it. Now, writing to the blockchain. There's two ways of doing this. First, you can deploy a program. We've covered this. If this is something that Solana doesn't do, or if there's something that there's some custom functionality that you want, there isn't a program that exists on chain that does this. You will write a program with Rust. You will test it with TypeScript or Rust, and then you will deploy it with the Solana CLI. And the most common way of writing to the blockchain is, again, as something I've already mentioned, is interacting with existing programs. So similar to reading, you need the address of the program, and either you have an SDK that covers all the formatting, or you need the program interface. So an interface is a declaration of how you can interact with the program, which functions you can call, what data formats it expects, what the structure is supposed to be. All of that is the program interface. It's the buttons you can press, it's how hard you can press them, how long you can press them, and what they will give back to you. Now, the steps of this, you have to encode any inputs. If there are any, aren't always inputs, but yeah, if you're sending data, again, you'll have to turn it from text into ones and zeros. Next, you'll have to sign the transaction. This is from users, from yourself, whoever is changing assets, they have to approve that their assets are being changed. Then you'll structure all of this. So you'll put transactions in places, you'll put the data in the place, you'll bundle it all together, and then you will broadcast it to the network, and you have written to Solana. All right, now enough of that. Let's start building. For developers, everything you need to know is at solana.com/developers. Developer education is free. There's a ton of resources available. I have some guides as well, some tutorials as well as full-on courses that cover everything from reading, writing, Rust development, Solana client development. There's a bunch of SDKs. As I mentioned, there's a bunch of templates. Anything you need, Solana will provide. Solana app, this is a great platform to learn everything you need to know about Solana development, front end, back end, Rust, React, whatever it is, they'll cover that. And finally, earn.superteam.fun. This is a place where there's a lot of bounties. This is sort of like a bounty board for the ecosystem, not the official bounty board, but one of the bounty boards available in the ecosystem. So if you've learned a bunch and you want to make some money, you're looking for work, head over to earn.superteam.fun. And they will link you up with people that are looking for developers. For founders, you can go to solana.org/grants. The Solana Foundation provides equity-free grants for you to build stuff. They will connect you with investors in the ecosystem. They will give you support. They will give you guidance. They will help you figure out what it is, how you want to build the thing that you want to build, and they will give you money to build it. And they also have a venture arm. So if you're investing, if you're looking to scale up and you need lots of investment, they will help invest, and they will help you. They will invest, and they will help you find investors. YC publishes a list of requests for startups every year. This year, there was a request for a stablecoin finance. I will link this in the description. So if you like stablecoins like me, and if you like payments like me, and if you want to build a startup that does something with payments, check out the YCRFS. And there's also build.superteam.fun. This is another place in the ecosystem where people submit their ideas and people submit their demands, whatever it is they want, problems that they need solved, things that they want built. You can find it over there. And finally, go to solana.com/hackathon and sign up. No matter who you are, a developer, a founder, an investor, a designer, maybe you're just an enthusiast and you want to get involved with the hackathons that are happening on Solana. Solana hackathons are a bit like a launchpad for things that are happening in the ecosystem. Companies worth millions, tens of millions have been launched from Solana hackathons. You go on, even if you don't win, you can go on to get investments, you can go on to get funds, grants from the ecosystem. You can get users and you can get started on Solana. That is all for today. I hope y'all had fun. The sun's going down. I am going to get some food. If you have any questions, put them in the description. This entire chart, all of these graphs, I will be putting them on GitHub. So you can, if you want a summary, there's also a text version of all of this. So if you need any of that stuff, check the description. I will have a bunch of links in there as well. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, as always, please put them in the description. Goodbye. Dad, are you gonna watch this? That would be funny.